Okay, here we are. We are going to take a look at some of the historic hotels that were in Branchville. You may know about some of them, and I think I have a secret hotel for you to look at that's pretty cool. But here we go, without further ado. All right, this is the early 1900s, and already the last built hotel is standing there. So the hotels we're going to talk about were built before the Hotel Branchville. This Chautauqua, it's a Chautauqua festival. I had to look that up. I had no idea what this was. It's some kind of movement at the turn of the last century to embrace the arts and education, and all kinds of really liberal stuff was happening in Branchville in 1900. So we're having a Chautauqua festival. All right, Branchville was a destination. People say, well, why'd you have all these hotels in Branchville? Because the train stopped here, was the end of the line. That put us on the map a little bit more. Businesses were thriving, businessmen came to town, salespeople, and they needed to have a place to stay. It was also a gateway town to all the resorts in the mountains, and the lakes and the forests, and the people needed to get out of the stifling, disgusting cities, as I was talking to Ann about this morning, the pestilence of being in the city, and so that helped. Some visitors spent their time right here in a hotel for the whole time, and others used it as a stopping place. But the need for hotels was there, so that was a big deal. Debbie, there's places to sit. There's over here, over here. I know, it's fine, it's fine. Okay, you may recognize this one. This is our Park Place Hotel. I'm not even going to talk about this because I did a whole presentation on it a couple months ago. But it says George Horton, proprietor. There's a livery stable involved. That's the Park Place Hotel. And a little bit about it. It was opened in 1866. Hotel, dining, a bar, and it's still going. It's our longest running show. It still houses people. It still feeds people. And it still quenches thirst, so it's still doing its thing. Then we had the Pines. They opened in 1907, I think. That'll say it on my next slide. I don't have to remember anything because I put it on my slides. But this is the Pines, out of town. But it was beautiful, magnificent. Golf course, boating. Hiking up through the woods. They had trails carved out through the woods with overlook, and it was a favorite vacation spot. And eventually, as the hotel business dwindled in Branchville, it became a very nice retirement old folks home. But then, as with so many things, it deteriorated.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
When I was young, I remember guys with mental handicaps or something coming from the Pines from here. When did that change, or when did it go away? Or
those clients were there, I would say, in the 80s and the 90s, and by the end of the 90s, it pretty much was shutting down.
Oh, okay.
So.
I still, I think it was 2020. I used to go there and do a Bible study with some of them.
In 2020? No.
Oh, I'm sorry, not 2020. 2006.
Okay, 2006.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So okay, so in the turn of this century, it started to really deteriorate, and it was pretty much closed.
My friend was the caretaker.
So here we are at one of our locations. This is 8 Main Street the other day. Where that car is parked is the site of the first hotel I'm going to talk about. The American House was at 8 Main Street. When I went looking at deeds to see who had it, who owned it, who did things there, in 1828 there was a deed for the property, but there was no hotel mentioned. But by 1860, there's a deed that states that Margaret Stoll sold this property to William H. Bell. William H. is the railroad guy. He's the guy that did everything in Branchville at this time. But the word hotel was in the deed, so it was already built by now. I don't know when it was built. It was built somewhere between 1828 and 1860. So that's an oldie, a very oldie. In 1863, Guy Price purchased the property, and then in 1902, George Bowman sold it to Frank McNeely and John Flintloft. The reason I have those asterisks on those names, along with John Henry, is that when I did other deeds, these guys were buying up hotels in Branchville. They all were running hotels at different times. It's just wild to me that the same people, you would think, oh, I have my hotel already in Branchville, I don't want another one, but then they'd sell this one and go get another one. So, in 1911, George Martin sold this hotel to John Henry, and of interest for me when I was reading through these deeds, and I don't read them very carefully, I'm looking for dates and people. But when they describe the property, it's how many chains, how many links, the big old maple on the corner. But in every one of these deeds, it had this barn that used to be there. The barn was not there at the time they were selling the property, but in every deed it would say the barn that was there, which I think is hilarious. It's lots
Which was definitely a country area, I know that.
Yeah. The barns were there for housing the horses that took the wagons and the people places. There's a lot of houses today that still have barns in the backyard. Ann?
Yeah, looking at it, the railroad came in what, 1855?
Later than that.
69.
So some of
69.
these hotels were built before the railroad came through?
Some of them were, yes. But this one is definitely prior to the railroad. Definitely. The Park Place came just prior to the railroad, but they knew the railroad was coming to town. But this one is older. This one was before they had their eyes set on the railroad. I'm going to tell you about George Martin in a second, but I'm going to also show you this because this was donated today. I saw Ann in church this morning. I said, Ann, this guy, George S. Martin, is he related to your husband's cousin, Martin? And she goes, I'll find out. So hours later, she shows up with a photograph in a frame of George S. Martin, a donation now to the museum, which we're very grateful for. And he was Richard Martin's grandfather. And he was the man, he's that man in 1911 who sold it. He already owned it. I don't know when he got his hands on it, somewhere between 1902 and 1911, but he sold it to John Henry. But he was still proprietoring it. And John Henry had another hotel, so it gets confusing. I can't even pretend that I know the answer. That is a sign that is now hanging inside our museum on the other wall. It says American House George, GEO, George S. Martin, proprietor. So we got his photograph too. I'm so proud of this. That is a picture of the old American house, and that, the birdhouse. Let's talk about that. The birdhouse was up there forever. I think the birdhouse was there for a very long time, and I don't know if it was Dave Bathgate told me about somebody who drove their car and knocked it down.
Yeah, Andy Garris lived on Church Hill. That's a long time ago.
He knocked down the birdhouse with his car, Andy Garris, but we won't hold it against him. But this was a very, very fancy place.
Yeah.
It was
You can see
very
the
upscale.
barn in the back.
Okay, let me go.
Oh, yeah,
There's a barn.
the barn that used to be there.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, there had to be another barn somewhere back here, because they ran into that too. And this is the right of way.
Oh, it's Main Street there.
Yeah,
That was called Horseshoe Alley Road. Horseshoe Alley, that was the name of that road. It went all the way back to the barn and the blacksmith shop.
okay, there's a blacksmith shop back here in this barn area.
The blacksmith shop is still there.
Just came out on Madison Street.
Okay, so this goes back to Madison. So this is Main Street. It's known as Main Street now.
And that's a balcony, right?
Yes, a
It goes
porch
all
all the
down?
way, two
Wow.
sides. It's not around the far side or the
Oh,
back.
I see.
It's just these two sides.
That's cool.
Yes, it was fancy.
That hotel was actually built in 1906. The original had, I believe, burnt down
This one was a 1906
Yeah, it was
one? Oh,
Wayne McCabe just did about a year ago, about an article about that.
okay, well, that would have been helpful for me yesterday if I knew about Wayne McCabe doing this. All right, well, okay, so it burned down and was rebuilt. All right, we have
It was part of the fire, and
in 1888 it got burned down? Okay, that makes sense. And so when do you think this was built then? Following
it
the
was
18?
1906, I'm almost positive.
1906, so we went for that length of time without a hotel on that property.
No, but there's another hotel right up the street, you have that one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so that one was open.
Okay.
That one didn't burn down until later.
Right.
John Henry was
Right.
still open up the street.
Right, okay, so John Henry's Hotel was open up the street. All right. Interesting.
Let me, one more thing.
Yes, we're still,
Originally, when Bell had bought it, that belonged to, at one time, the Bell, and that was called an inn, and it was a tavern. They called it a tavern or an inn, so there might have been like a hotel there too at the
okay,
same time.
because in the actual deed, it uses the word hotel at that time.
Okay, yeah.
It
and I
doesn't
have
say
these-
inn, it
if
says
I have,
hotel.
the Bell's last will and testament, he refers to that lot as the tavern lot.
Okay,
But also the inn. So, anyway.
he combines them both, he had an
Yeah.
inn and a tavern.
He's thinking of John.
So this is a little bit later because there's a car, right? Going back there to that barn. What's the name of it again? What alley?
Horseshoe Alley.
Horseshoe Alley. Oh, that makes sense since there's shoe and horses back there. I got it now. I got it. I need a connector. All right. And this is a postcard from 1910, postmarked in 1910. So, this is much later. You can tell by the car style. Those of you who are car people, that looks like something from 1970 something maybe.
I'm gonna say it looks like something from 1970 or something
Yeah,
like that.
70s. And there's a fire escape out here because now is no longer a hotel, it is an apartment house, boarding house. Now, Sheila, do you want to tell us a quick story?
Oh, okay, when I first moved to New Jersey with my ex-husband, he got us an apartment in Branchville, which I'd never been here before. So the first day I came, I couldn't find the place, I had no idea where I was living. And then when I did, we had the apartment on the 3rd floor. And it was, the one on the left side was not usable, it was all boarded up, the right side. And of course, it was like a train, the bedroom, the living area, the kitchen, the bathroom was in the hall. And when I first went there, there was a little Hungarian lady on the 2nd floor and a young couple on the 1st floor who I became friends with, but it was in disrepair when we lived there.
And what year about?
I would say 71, 72. Yeah, it was, it was okay.
And did you tell me about somebody falling through the floor?
Oh, well, the roof fell in, the ceiling fell in on my friend's apartment on the 1st floor, right over her daughter's crib. Thank goodness he wasn't there. And, yeah, it had a lot of unique issues, maybe not so unique.
We'll have some pictures of what's in there. Jerry?
My family had a fire on February 25th of 1939 in Valeville down by the 2 bridges. And we moved into that house after that fire. I lived there for 6 months. In 1940, 39 and 39.
1939, you lived there? How
Yes.
was it then?
I don't remember, I was
Okay.
only 3.
I didn't remember all those days exactly, you don't remember that.
Bill Bathgate?
Well, there's 2, as you can see, there's been an addition on the front, put on the front of that.
Yes,
And that's where,
Churchill
what's the name of
Travel.
the travel agency?
Churchill.
Churchill Travel, and then there's been several things in there. I don't know what date that was, added on. But also, on the right-hand side of the original building, on your previous picture, on the inside of the building, there was a cistern on the inside.
In here?
You know, inside the building, halfway down, probably about in front of that car.
Okay,
But on the inside of the building, they caught all the rainwater, and that's where they would have fresh water for the inside.
Hmm.
And it was still there when Dave, Joe Cadell, and I did our
exploration.
excursion through there.
Yeah. I have some good pictures of that.
Yeah.
So that's it. I want to say in the late 70s maybe. I don't know. Does it look familiar to you, Sheila, or have you blocked it
Yeah,
out?
no, I
Okay.
remember the travel agent.
Yeah.
I used to work with the gal who run it.
Yeah.
That
Sorry.
Truesdale had a glass place.
No, they tore it
Just
down.
Chusel did the glass before Betty had Churchill? Must have. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
'70s.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
me
not
too.
sure when the travel.
The travel agency was there up until kind of recently.
Then it was back there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I know it was there then, because
Okay.
they took some stuff to them.
yeah.
Debbie, is that the same building where Don Campbell's?
No, this isn't the Don Campbell's. This is next door to Don Campbell's. Don Campbell's has the
Go to your.
karate in it.
The previous.
Okay.
This one?
There was one, had a picture of it.
That, okay.
Well, that's-
Yes, I did. I know what you're talking about. So that's the Churchill travel one, with the VW.
Yeah, on before that, Danny Kent had a liquor store there.
Down in this part, I'm gonna go
Danny
forward
Kent,
again.
His dad has the liquor store on the 206. That was, he had it there first.
Who are you talking about?
Uh,
Which, Dan Campbell?
Kent's liquor store.
Kent.
I'm getting hearing aids for Christmas. Kent's Liquors was there before it went out onto the highway?
Yeah.
Oh,
he
okay, okay,
Had a liquor store there.
okay.
That
So,
was- That was Danny's father there.
to me, architecturally, this place, this add-on looks like it's from the
Yeah,
30s. With the glass up here and the way it looks. I don't know. All right, decline of a grand hotel. The American House became a boarding house with apartments. It was not well kept and continued to deteriorate. In 2006, Bill Bathgate, Joe Cadella, and John Newcomer received permission to document the inside of the decrepit old building. I think that's spelled correctly. You can see the beautiful interior details originally built into this very old hotel, but note the lack of updates over the years. And ultimately, it was unsavable. So take a look at this stuff. This is when they pulled the fire escape off the front. All right. Beautiful marble fireplace in the front parlor. Look at the detail on that. Amazing. These fish scale things, this whatever emblem, shield it is, it's just stunning. Stunning. All hand-carved marble. I say the ghost of Bill because on the back of this photograph, Joe Cadella had written, "The grand staircase with the ghost of Bill in a red golf shirt." But that's, I mean, it's a skinny staircase, but it's ornate. And then that's a piece of detail.
Horrible.
Corbel. I heard it, I repeated it. The skylight at the top of the 3 floors of beautiful staircase. That was right outside of Sheila's apartment.
The penthouse.
The penthouse, as she called it, yeah. This is one of those beautiful bay windows. This is the 2nd floor. I could run back to one of those pictures and you'll see it, but I'm gonna do it for a second.
It's the first floor.
That was the 1st floor? The picture that Joe gave me had it noted on the back, I don't know, but if it was the 2nd, because there's the 1st floor one right here, and here's the 2nd floor one right here. So it could have been either, you're right.
Well, look at the building across the street.
Okay.
That blue building looks like it was.
See the blue building?
Back,
Come on.
back, yeah.
It's right across the street.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Although,
Yeah, that looks like it might be second story.
I'm just, oh, and you know what else I liked about this? First or second floor notwithstanding, it's got those beautiful iron radiators in it. If there was any heat coming out of them, I would have put a plus, I don't know. A clawfoot tub, which would be something really spectacular if it weren't in this crummy bathroom, but it was a clawfoot tub. I'm pointing out the crumminess of the later years because there was a lot of discussion about why do you save that place? It's old, but look at it. You'd have to have millions and millions of dollars to restore any of that.
He was gonna do, he was even gonna go to the Pine.
There's your kitchen. That's Sheila's third floor kitchen. That's where she did her dishes. Poor Sheila.
No dishwasher.
No dishwasher.
Yeah, we did, it was called Sheila.
Again, the old iron radiator. But I wanted to note that after all those years, you still needed to turn the hot and cold on two separate faucets in this sink. So they just didn't update anything. This was a slumlord situation until.
That was our bathroom.
Yeah.
When we moved
Our
our house,
bathroom?
Yes.
our house was exactly like that.
Wallpaper.
Yeah.
Our bathroom's still like that?
You still have.
No.
You
I have
still
hot, more hot and cold faucets. I thought
on
about
one
that.
side and the other?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm
They don't
impressed.
do that anymore?
Nope.
My God, am I
Nope.
out.
You've inherited an antique sink. That's what you've
Our
done.
house is one of the first houses in town, so
Well,
that makes
that's-
sense. At least I was told
believe
that anyway.
You see this?
Out in the back there was a shed, and somebody decided that they would plaster movie posters or show posters on the walls in the shed. And it's just, Joe took pictures of it, and they have it. John, do you remember this trip through the house?
Not really.
No? Okay. Well, your name's on it, so.
Thank you.
This is a beam down in the cellar, and it's got the peg construction. So. All right, that was it for American House. Now they said when this was not in place between the time it burned down and the time they rebuilt it, that John Henry's Hotel was working. So John Henry's Hotel is right where this is 12 Main Street. This was a hotel. This is Jerry's house he's living in with his son Kyle. And this white sliver over here is the Woods Funeral Home. So this little white ranch that is tucked away, and you probably wouldn't notice it, was I'm gonna get to the picture. I'm gonna get to the picture now. That.
Hotel was down.
That.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's where it was.
I'm gonna go back and read that slide,
See the shadow?
but I want to show you. This says Sussex Hotel, J. Henry, proprietor, and this is John Henry's son.
I don't know his first, I don't know.
You did know. You knew yesterday, but now I can't. And you told me 5 times.
That was yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, someday I'll know what his name was, but that's little Henry.
Well, Dad always used to compare little Henry to his father, said he was nothing but a pipsqueak, whatever that meant.
So that's pretty cool, and that's 1910. So let me get back to my previous. Guy Price is another guy who owned hotel properties in town. He just was on a bunch of different deeds. In 1871, Mr. Sherrod and Mr. Morris, I believe, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing again, but they sold it to Bryce Bedell and a man by the last name of Van Duzer. In that deed, it was stated that Bedell and Van Duzer will have the privilege of a roadway sufficient to drive a team and wagon to the rear of the building to be erected on the lot herein described. And then in 1877, Bedell sells this to John Henry, who ran it apparently for the rest of its duration, but I can't swear to that. So that hotel was built somewhere between 1871 and 1877. And just a little tidbit, we had a traveling salesman who kept this area as his home base, and his name was Isaac Silverman. He had a son, Sam. He had a lot of kids, but Sam Silverman. So Isaac Silverman was the traveling salesman. First, he would walk around with his wares, and then he had a wagon and a horse with his wares. And then apparently, there's a story about a blizzard that put the end to his traveling around.
Yeah, and the blizzard of '88, he told his wife he wasn't going to do it because he got stuck at the lake for a whole week and couldn't get home.
He got stuck in the '88 storm. In 1888, there was a really bad snowstorm, the '88 storm.
Okay, so that's
And he got trapped out, walking out by Clover's Lake.
yeah.
So he said that's it for him.
That was the end of it. So guess what he did? He opened up his business in the basement storefront of this hotel. And then by 1899, he moved it across the street, which we all know now as Orr's, Clothes for Country Living. In 1898, see, I have a deed that says that this got sold from an Edward Hansey to an Emily Pointer. So I don't know how that fits into the John Henry owns the hotel forever, but and the reason I say Pointer is because she and her husband were involved in the Hotel Branchville. There's a sheriff's sale. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's pretty interesting. So the Pointers were involved in hotel ownership, and this hotel eventually became the 3-apartment house with a confectionery store in the basement. It was destroyed by a fire in November of 1921, but by then it was just apartments and the store.
That's a neat building.
Isn't it? That's the storefront right down here. There's a door from the sidewalk. And again, this is Jerry's house. And at the time, this was D.L.B. Smith's mother and father's house in 1910. He had already built his house right there next door to us. So,
Debbie, is that a barn back there on the right side?
you know, they always had these bars. Yeah, it is. And that's the right of way that they had to be able to drive the wagon with a team of horses to the rear of the building that was going to be constructed.
If you owned a hotel, you had to be able to house the horses.
So you had to have a livery.
You had to have something to,
Okay.
take care of the people that came there.
Okay, or they wouldn't come.
Or it wouldn't, it
It's
was
a-
like a license. You actually
Oh,
had to
okay.
have a license to own.
Mm.
All the way back from early colonial times.
That's so they've been making laws about stuff like this for a
Yes,
long
they were.
time, not just in the last.
England was making laws
Yes.
long before we were.
Yes.
But another quick story about
Yeah,
this hotel.
please.
John Henry, he would have dinners in that hotel. The Sam Silverman tape, remember that? He would talk about, he would sell dinners for 25 cents, and he said he was making a killing. He would, every day, he was
25-cent dinners, and
25 cents a dinner.
and he made enough to buy other hotels with that, I guess.
I'll try that today, see how well it
Yeah.
works.
that's like-
And he also, Sam kind of thinks he was related to his father, Isaac.
the Henrys and the Silvermans were
He
related
mentioned
somehow?
in that tape, he thought
Okay.
he had a relation. That's probably what brought Isaac here. That's my
Okay.
thought.
That's an interesting extra piece. Check out this door over here. I love the way that looks. I don't know if you can see that. I'm standing in the way for some of you. Just amazing. The pretty details they put on these buildings.
Look at the woman sitting next to the door.
Right here. Is that what you just said, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great photograph, and it's the only one I came across of the hotel. I think this is out there. I mean, a lot of people have seen this, but it's a great old photograph.
It's good that everybody's posing though.
Yes. Yes. And this guy doesn't look too happy to be standing there for that long, or this guy.
Come on, get
Hurry
on
up and
with
take the
it.
picture.
They wanted to head down to Park Place.
So now this is the secret hotel. This is 3 Milk Street, and it's the Milk Street Distillery, and the barn is in the back. You all know what this looks like, I'm sure, all right? This is the original site of the Beehive Hotel. This is the Beehive Hotel, not this, all right? What was that?
blackout.
Goodness gracious. Okay, there was a barn. This is the Campbell farm. It was the Smith farm and then the Campbell farm. And please correct my information as I go. But that barn was converted into a summer hotel somewhere in the early 1900s. And it was located across the road from the train station. So it was convenient and inexpensive because it was just a converted barn. Located across the road, I just said that the hotel business slowed in town. The building once again became a barn and storage for the Decker and Simmons Coal and Lumber and Feed Company. And then Household Engineering purchased the property. And by this time, the barn really wasn't a big deal for these businesses and, Milk Street. So let's show you a few things. So this is, as stated on my slide, Albert and Merle. Two boys hanging out at their dad's feed store. This is the distillery. And back here, you can see that barn has windows. It's not a barn, it's a hotel windows. All right? That's what that is. I still think this building is great. Look at that leaded glass in that window for the feed store. All right. Then it became Decker and Simmons, and then it was Household Engineering. I remember it when it was Household Engineering. I don't really remember
So
Decker
do I.
and Simmons. Yeah. And then there's some more. There's the barn in the back, the beehive barn. The side of the beehive barn that faces Culver Brook. This is the winter chicken dinner. This is an old postcard, and it's a Culvermere postcard. Stamped on it says the creamery plays host to Culvermere, Branchville, New Jersey. So these folks are visitors at Culvermere that were brought in to Branchville to go look at the creamery. And by the looks of their outfits, it looks like late 20s, right? And they look like young people. I'm sure they are. So they come into the creamery, and they are on a footbridge over the Culver Brook, which runs between the creamery being what was then Houston Fletcher's, now it's Wilco, and a bunch of storage facility. But there's a footbridge there, and they're all on it, and behind them is the Beehive Hotel. So it's a better shot of it. And you can tell, it's barn-like in structure, there's no doubt about that, except for this part, I think, is not barn-like. And that's not there anymore. I don't know how they managed this, but, so I just love that picture. And I said to Bill, you had a picture of these, what I thought it was all the kids that lived in the Beehive Hotel. And he goes, I know I have it, but I can't find it. And then I went to Dave Bathgates and looked at his postcards, and then I went back to Dave because I forgot something I needed to get out, and I said, Dave, this is the picture. So this is Dave Bathgate's postcard on here. And Bill will find his. I know you will.
One more thing.
Yes.
I just want to, and that tape that Sam Silverman did, he talked about his father buying that barn, or in the hotel, the old hotel, in 1900. And he kept it going as a boarding house until 1919, when Borden's bought it. That's what he said.
Okay.
So, and he also said that he had over 100 tenants in that.
I believe it because it's huge. It is a huge structure. So Sam Silverman said that his dad, Isaac, purchased this barn Beehive Hotel and ran it as a boarding house from 1900 till 1919.
Yes.
And could have over 100 people in it.
And then Borden's bought it and Borden's bought all that property in
Borden bought it.
1919, I believe.
Okay.
And then it became part of their storage.
Okay.
And at that point.
Well, it's still quite a beautiful, it's falling apart barn, but it's amazing.
I would love to get in there someday.
Okay, yes. Well, you know what? We just asked Mr. Ruggiero, he'll let us in. So this is the same. I went and stood. I couldn't go on the bridge to the creamery because it's not there. But I went and stood back in behind there. It's the same view, angle of the barn, And so this is, I just think that's leaves. I don't think there's anything there. And that would be, this section here, this wasn't there. This section here would be where that raised area is with the 3 stories of windows and only 2 stories of windows here. That's the front end. That gives you the nice backdrop at the Milk Street Distillery if you're outside listening to music. That's the side that faces Montague Tool. And I just am enthralled with this part. I'm going to show you that in a second. Dave has told me that this down in here is where the horses were
Yeah,
kept, and there was a,
big vat is there where they drank out of.
okay, made out of cement,
But,
a cement trough for the horses. And here's a, really, close-up, okay. Now, obviously, the horses didn't step down into that deep well. I think they built up the staircase there, or the step outside, but that's the outside of that barn.
One time I read that Mayor Decker had horses in there and he had an auction there and auctioned them off, you know. He was an auctioneer then.
And that's a long time ago. Mayor Decker was mayor in
Yeah,
1900?
yeah, well, Mayor Decker was probably in the
30s and 40s.
Oh, okay, 20s or
and
20s to 40s?
40s.
I have to look up my date facts. Come on. Everybody know. Yes, Bill?
I think it was probably filled in after the 55 flood, because a lot of places where they weren't using them anymore, they would just seal them off. You can see the plywood on the doors. They weren't
Right.
gonna use it anymore.
Right,
They had
right.
access from the inside.
Okay. But obviously horses weren't going in and out of those doors because they built the sidewalk up or the parking lot up high. You couldn't get a horse to walk down into that. All right, here we come to the most beautiful hotel that was ever in Branchville, I think. And yet, I think it was probably the least successful from the deed transfers I saw. It's at 3 Broad Street. All right, you recognize that area?
I believe that's the bank, yes? Yeah,
Yeah.
Lakeland Bank. yes.
Lakeland Bank, the post office, the Presbyterian steeple, all right? This is where we're talking about. That's what it looked like when it was I think that bank was built in 55 or something, 55, 56. And that was the area of it there. But that's the Hotel Branchville that stood there. It was stunning. It's a stunning American craftsman, probably built at the turn of the century. Again, I could not find a specific date on the building of this, but it's just so pretty. All right, 1900s. The land was sold to Emily Pointer, there she is again, by Noah Hopkins in November of 1900. I don't know, maybe he built that hotel, because he was the big builder. He built the Johnson's house up on the top of New Street. That was his private residence. He built a lot of houses right out here on Wantage Avenue, and this was on the corner of Wantage and Broad, and he very well might have built it. I'm making that up, I don't know, but I just look at it and think he probably had something to do with it. So here's all the deed changes. So in 1900, Mrs. Pointer gets it. By 1905, there's a sheriff's sale. And then there's another sale in 06, another one in 10, another one in 16, another one in 22, another one in 26. And in 1927, it was sold to the Branchville Hotel Company. And it didn't really last that much longer. Eventually the property was divided. Stores, including the meats and groceries, and then became what's the current post office, were built at the point of Broad and Wantage, and then the bank was built, as I said, 55, 56. So it was a fancy dancy joint. This is an early picture of town, and that piece of grass there is where the post office is now. That's the barnyard up here. But this is all Noah, I was gonna say Noah Columbus, Noah Hopkins property right here is Noah Hopkins. He owned down Wantage and down Broad, this whole section. Oh, postcards. All right, very pretty, all colorized. I'm going to show you something else. We're going to talk about this one of these days because Bill keeps talking to me about the Van Orden building, which is now the Chinese restaurant. But take a look at this wall on the Van Orden building. It's a brick wall, 3 stories high. When you look at the Selective Risks building that they've just refurbished into a, I don't even know what to call it. It's not an open to the public hotel, but it's business hotel for them. This building is DLB Smith's building. It is only a 2-story building, and then there's this piece of brick wall standing up in the middle of nowhere. That's where it came from. All right? But here we are at the Hotel Branchville. This is all that green lawn that is going to become our post office. I think they must have built it out there because it's not much there, but it's a beautiful building.
Debbie,
Yes.
those postcards were in black and white, but they would send them to Germany to have them colorized.
In fact, I don't know why we had to send them to Germany because I think we had colors here. But you're right; these things all say that they're
A lot of
from
it went to
Germany.
Germany for,
Yes, yes.
and sent back.
If they're colors, if they got colors on them, because they didn't have colored film back then, obviously. So, but it's beautiful. I don't know if the horse was really that white.
Debbie, what's on the roof?
I think
Flag. Down.
that's a
Flag.
flag. Yeah.
It's flag
That's
hanging
the
off
flag?
wall.
It's on a pole in front.
No,
I
no,
think-
behind it.
No, behind, not the.
Wait, I know what you're looking at. This
Right
thing.
there.
What is
Yeah,
that?
What is that?
Take another, is he got another,
It's a
Views of
Portuguese
it?
flag.
I think it's a flag.
The post
It's a
is-
flag. Is it on the roof of the
Yeah, 'cause
hotel?
if you look at
Or
the
is
top
it
of the
this-
pole,
It's part
there's
of
a
this
left, that
flag.
pulling it up,
Yeah.
looks at the top of the flag on the left side. To me,
Oh,
anyway.
I'm kinda seeing that.
Maybe it's an alien.
That's weird.
I don't know. All
Okay,
right.
there's the flag.
There's another shot of the joint. DLB Smith store, the Van Orden building behind it, and the Methodist Church steeple, and then across the street it says Hotel Branchville on that sign. I don't have a post date for this postcard. This one was dated 1905. Not colorized. 1907. I think I have this on a picture in my house because this, I always, that horse and wagon. But this looks like more property now from this angle.
They have
There
telephone.
he is again. Yeah, you know what? We had power from the electric pond plant, the power plant. Who was just telling me this? I gotta think about this. 2 seconds. There was oh no, I read it. Mr. Hoos, Milton Hoos, Senior, said when he came to Branchville in the 1920s, he said, I couldn't understand why at night everybody's house was all lit up. Everybody's house. The lights were on in every place in everybody's house. He said, and then when we moved here, I found out that Mr. Chrisman charged a flat rate of $1 a month for electricity, and he turned it on at dusk and turned it off somewhere in the nighttime when he felt like
10
it.
o'clock at night.
10 o'clock?
Yeah.
And then that was it. So nobody bothered to turn their lights on and off. They just left them on, and they would go on
I
and
heard
off
that
by
they didn't
Mr.
even have switches.
And the lights didn't have a switch?
That's what I heard, that the houses weren't even provided with switches. They
You just turn
came
them
on
all
and
right.
they went off.
There you go. That's even better than what I read from Mr. Hoos. Bill?
My grandfather's house had switches, but they weren't down on the floor, they were halfway up the wall.
Yeah,
All of them to the house were halfway up the wall.
I mean outlets, yeah.
yes. Jerry?
I don't know what happened to them, but when we cleaned out Sam Silverman's home, and the Garris Center had taken, and we actually had a copy of a 1900 bill where Isaac Silverman paid his electric bill.
Wow, wow. So that's why there's all these electric poles all over the place at such a time when you wouldn't expect to see it. But we had a lot of electricity in Branchville.
Deb,
Yes.
Bob told me that, well, you have one picture where you can see where they drove up the horses and underneath the covering. And he said beyond that, there was a stable. And he said the New Jersey State Police had a stable there. They had-
Behind the Hotel Branchville?
Behind that, yeah, they had two, they
Oh.
had a small, area, I think he said in one end of the building where the stable was, the two troopers were there, they were assigned to the northern area, from Newton all the way over to.
The Delaware
the
River.
Port Jervis line, yeah.
Huh.
And,
That is true.
then you see there now, you can see where the.
That.
you go-
That's
yeah.
back in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was in 1944 or 43 when they were tearing that down. They had all the commodes out on the front porch. My mother was a little bit upset because they put all the commodes out there because they didn't have indoor plumbing. And,
It was torn down
But
in
anyway.
46 or 47.
That's
I
funny.
remember walking
You mean they
on the way
moved
to
it?
school, so we
no, they were taking them out of the building when they were taking the building down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I
They
thought
didn't-
that's
they didn't make the
interesting.
Right on the
tenants,
front porch.
they didn't make the tenants go out.
Oh, okay. I never heard of that before. I thought, wow.
I
So-
think it might have been torn down in 46 or 47, I think.
I have something coming up. I think it's 43, but I can't
I think
remember.
it's
It's on one of my slides.
Because I was 6 or 7 years old at
Yeah.
the time, and I remember my mother being all disgusted.
Because they had
Commodes
the
lined up on the front porch, and they had a sign on it.
free for the taking.
Well, no, 5 cents a piece.
So this is the Presbyterian Church staircase right there. This is Wantage Avenue. And then this is Broad Street. And again, the hotel. It says
I love the way it
1900.
looks, because my whole life I've been living here, where there's nothing, there's always been a post office
Yeah,
there.
well, now
Looks so
you
cool without a building there, to
get to
me.
see it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another colorized postcard from Germany. But they really are beautiful. And the stonework on the pillars on the front porch, just stunning. Just stunning.
The stones are still there next to the parking lot.
We always used to tell
Really?
Sam the bank made a mistake.
Huh.
They should have
In
bought
the
it
back
and
of the
converted
post
it.
office where you
Mm.
had,
Yeah.
had parking.
I'm gonna
You
go.
can see the stones.
I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna go walk through there.
Is that building in brick too, or no?
No,
Oh.
it's painted that color, but it was
okay.
clapbored, sided.
Because hey, if
house.
it's stone and brick, that was an expensive building.
Yes, it was. I think it was expensive to build that. Now this is the question, Bill, and anybody else that knows. I pulled out my famous beautiful brass old magnifying glass, Bill, and I could only read in that picture that was from the postcard, EBB, Thomas EBB. But if you think it was ERB,
I thought it was ERB or.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
all right, we'll have to
You
look
could
some
be
more.
right. I don't know.
I don't know.
When did I tell you that yesterday?
But this is a 1912 postcard, and there's awnings, and there's ivy all over those beautiful stone pillars. I would not have done that, but it was the thing, I guess. And now up here, E.B. Backer, proprietor. And he owned the hotel from 22 to 26, so there's a deed with his name on it. This is just stationery from the hotel room, and if you wanted to call them, their cell phone number is 86. And I'm gonna have to tell you what this is. This says bladder inflammation, and on the back of it is a recipe of what you can combine together to drink down if you're having bladder inflammation. So, I don't know about that. I can't recommend that either. So, these hotels, these big, beautiful hotels, they fade. Somehow, Branchville decided to become a dry town. somewhere in the 19 teens. I don't have information about that. I read that in a selected risk insurance magazine, and that shut down a lot of the taverns, and therefore the hotels were not as desirable as the ones out of town where you could still get a drink. The Great Depression took a toll, but really what happened is the transportation changed again. And rather than having trains come up, and that's how you got up to the country, you could drive on a brand new highway in an automobile, and people just went further and further. Branchville didn't need to be the beautiful location of getting to the country that it had been. As we pointed out, some of these buildings became boarding houses and apartments. Some were knocked down, and some are still standing but no longer in use for their original purpose. And here we go. July of 1943 is the date that was on this. But that doesn't mean it was actually there, but July of 43. So this is the Hotel Branchville being dismantled. And then tell me whose stores these are.
Okay, start all the way to the left.
Here?
Yeah, that's the Blue Knot store. And,
What is it?
And behind it, excuse me?
What is it? The what?
Blue Knot store.
Blue Knot
Blue Knot store.
store.
Clark Perry and
Clark Perry's.
and Andy Eckweiler. No, go back up.
Okay.
Right there. And Andy Eckweiler in the back, and Pete Smith at a butcher shop. Now you come down to the next one. That was Sylvia Bjornsgaard's pantyhose shop, or panty shop. And the reason I know about her is because she rented an apartment from us on Broad Street, her and her daughter. And later on, there was a building next to, well, down by where Houston Fletcher used to be. It's still there, the long building. She moved down there, and that's where Wayne Orr's mother-in-law worked for her when they moved from there to there.
And what kind of shop was it? Panties? They sewed panties?
Women's underwear.
Ladies' underwear, panties, okay.
Lingerie.
Lingerie.
And the next one down, the last one above the car there, that was Branchville's own A&P store there.
Okay, the
Now, when
A&P.
they decided to close it, Isidore Gibbons, he wanted to be manager in the Newton store. They said no. So he said, well, I'm not leaving this damn building, it's mine. And he still had the store when A&P moved out. And on the very end, that was the post office that went straight back. Like now, the post office takes up the whole
Yes.
triangle there.
Yes.
So that's, the small building is where the post office is now?
Yes. The post office inhabits this entire building now. When I first got here in '66, there was a ceramic shop in
Yes, on
there.
the corner.
I went to Mrs., can't remember her name. She's an imposing woman who I was very afraid of, so I was very good about painting my ceramics and then going right home.
I just bought stuff that was already done, I didn't take for it.
No, we went. My mother had to figure out a way to get us out of the house, so she would get 50 cents, go up and paint some ceramics, so we did. My brothers
But
went.
July 43 is accurate, because I was 7 years old when
Okay. There's some more of it. And they carefully dismantled it. But as you can see, and Debbie just said this, those pillars are still standing there, so those rocks, I guess they didn't want to drag them away. Too heavy.
Definitely there.
Not worth it. Okay. So that's the end of the hotels in Branchville. Aside from the fact that Park Place is still there, I have to give them kudos because they are still standing and it's still, along the lines of what it was. So it's a big deal. Bill and Dave, thank you. Thanks for all the stories. It's great. The exec committee, these guys do a lot of stuff to help this whole thing happen. So I can't thank them enough. And the Borough of Branchville, who gives us the space to use. It's like unbelievable how generous they are to us. So
Are you ever going to do Madam Queen's Hotel?
I am going to look for a future presentation on Madam Queen. This is going to be an interesting one. There's a lot of
Just give them all
a little bit of a tidbit. She had a little dog. This is Anna, what's her name? No, we're not gonna tell you now. She had a little dog that, and she fought with the town all the time. She wanted more and more ability to sell booze, and she was a wild thing. And she had a little dog named Tippy. She lived up on 2nd Street, and the dog would go to work with her in the morning, but then everybody would give the dog drinks. He'd hang out at the bar and get drunk, and then stumble his way back up Broad Street to Lloyd Avenue, all the way to 2nd Street.
But this happened mainly on Sundays when the railroaders were waiting to be on schedule before they go out. And being the old skinflint she was, these guys were a lot smarter than she was. They were from Hoboken, they knew all the tricks. So while they were getting served and she was pulling tricks on them, they were getting Tippy drunk. And Tippy would go all the way down Broad Street, up Lloyd Avenue, into 2nd Street. He may flop over a few times.
So was Tippy a little tipsy?
So
Yeah,
Tippy was tipsy, yes, he was a
But
tippy
that's
over
only
dog.
the,
Alright, so we will,
that's
that's,
only a taste.
that's just a taste of excitement to come with our Branchville Historical Society. So, anyway, thank you.
Ooh, I lost my temper.